Hello. My name is Julia. I'm very happy to be speaking here. I spoke last week, and it's the same speech, so you'll get to hear it again if you came last week. The history that survives is history that is given permission to survive. This is a theme seen time and time again in Christianity. Those who play along with those in power are those who are allowed to be remembered. Today, I'm not here to reflect on a story from the Bible or any religious scholar, but instead I want to tell you about two medieval Christian visionaries and how they tricked their societies into valuing their devotions to God, one by minimizing herself and the other by discrediting herself entirely. If you know anything about female mysticism, you know about Hildegard von Bingen. However, she is so expansive that there's a good chance you've only encountered one aspect of what makes her such a powerful figure in Christian mysticism. She was a brilliant doctor, leader, linguist, musician, all without getting into her status as the first female mystic who translated her own visions, which was usually a task performed by local monks and priests. We could have a year of Hildegard reflections and still have more to talk about. So for my limited time here today, I want to briefly tell you about her musical compositions. Hildegard became a respected figure in her society mainly because of her tie to God as a mystic. God chose her as a muse despite her being a, quote, poor little figure of a woman, and therefore by not following her word, men of her era were disobeying God directly, even when she was openly criticizing those in power and challenging her emperor's ability to rule. She used the same argument as to why her art should be valued as well. In the medieval era, art created by women, especially nuns, were seen as childish. Their attempts were cute, but ultimately unsubstantial, and at worst dangerous. So she claimed the art she created was given to her in divine visions. Hildegard never took credit for any of the compositions, claiming that she heard them as celestial voices in her sleep. She agreed with the predominant opinion that women were poor artists by nature, and therefore the melodies she put to paper and taught to the nuns in her abbey couldn't be written by her despite her years of studying music and composition. That was all just a coincidence, really. By scrubbing clean any woman behind the music, her compositions were widely circulated and celebrated around Germany in the 1100s and are still being performed today. But how could a non-mystic woman's art be treated with the same celebration without having a direct line to God to fall back on? If you've taken any theater history class, you've learned that Roswitha of Gandersheim is the first recorded female playwright, but barely does academic discussion of her work go beyond her status as a milestone. She was viewed both at the time and in modern studies as a rather talentless writer, good for a woman but bad for a playwright, a real playwright anyways. And yet historians are forced to remember her because she was the first. While I don't have the time to explain why I think this is a very shallow view of her work, I love her plays so much that I'm going to go on a month-long residency to study them more in depth. Ask me about that after this. I can explain to you why we still have record of them. So if you've read any letters written by Roswitha, there is a jarring duality between how she depicts herself to the monks and emperors she communicated with and her fellow nuns and abbesses. In a letter she sent to the men overseeing the art in her convent, she wrote, quote, "Hopefully you have found me, a worthless little woman, worthy of your admiration. Rejoicing with brotherly affection, hopefully you have found in me some little knowledge of the arts, the subtlety of which far exceeds my womanly genius." Her strategy was to minimize, and hoping that by portraying herself as unthreatening, there was no reason to prevent her from continuing writing. In letters to fellow nuns, however, Roswitha's words read as borderline narcissistic. She claims she was put on earth with such divine storytelling skills that it would be an insult to God if she didn't write. She promises her abbess in one that she will do whatever it takes for her work to be remembered as historically important, even if that means she must preserve them in secret. Peter Dronke summarizes her seeming deception in this quote: "Her insistence on frailty, lowliness, and submissiveness, and incompetence all contain an element of deliberate overacting. Her constant use of diminutives is more than a stylistic mannerism. They reveal an aspect of her thought. They are self-assured, even self-assertive, by self-deprecating." Both women were extremely confident in their creations and believed that not only did their writing have the power to influence people, but they had the responsibility to publish their work in order to save other women's souls. Hildegard's piece Ordo Vitrium showed a female protagonist fighting representations of sins and ascending to divinity. All of Roswitha's plays shine a light on often overlooked female voices from the Bible and common saint stories. However, neither displayed publicly any confidence in their creative abilities. Ultimately, both women survived as artists in a time when most couldn't. Both of their strategies worked, and their art was widely circulated around in both their societies, but they had to distance their identities in the process, since good art made by women was seen as a paradoxical statement. They exchanged playing into the degradation their higher-ups required of them for the chance that their art would outlive them without being purposely destroyed. And as a result, I'm holding a copy of Roswitha's plays almost 1,000 years after she died.